Alex Varro, we have survived another week. It is Friday again.
Woohoo!
That's how we. Well, mhm.
Sorry, I'm just trying to wake myself up over here. Honestly, it's Friday. I'm a little groggy,
You just
and so
said
I'm just.
5 seconds ago when I saw the little icon that said Alex is at a Google Effects. Like, well, I never use that stuff. I only do it once in a while.
Well, I do only do it once in a while, but today I decided to go overboard on it. I was on a podcast earlier this week with Aubrey Siton, who used to work at 2K as a community
Hmm.
manager. He does a wrestling podcast, and with him being the host, I just kind of laid back, let him do his thing, and man, that guy really liked Google Effects, so it just kind of reminded me that stuff was there, and I kind of wanted to, you know,
You're reminded of the power of Google Effects.
it's like, hey, look, sound effects. What is that sound effect? I don't know. I don't know what that does. I forgot this stuff was kind of fun. It's good.
Oh, that's
Good
funny.
times.
How did your wrestling podcast go?
That went quite well. So Aubrey does a podcast, I think, every Monday now after Monday Night Raw, because he's in LA, so he can watch the East Coast feed early. And it's just him and a guest talking about wrestling,
Okay.
for a solid hour, hour and a half or so. And he's a lot of fun to talk to. He's a very energetic host. I will give him that, certainly, and he is definitely well into the wrestling stuff, so he is fairly knowledgeable. The archive of that is up on YouTube right now if you want to check that out at all. I've linked out to it on Twitter a couple of times. I'll probably do so again today later just to hit any stragglers and what have you. But yeah, that was fun. That was good.
I'm trying to think what I played this week. Did you play anything notable this week?
Well, I did play the Titanfall beta a little bit last night.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of folks are playing that. The beta went live on both PC. I think it's on PC too, and Xbox One. I'm playing on Xbox One just because that's
Yep,
the code that floated my way.
same.
What do you? I guess first let's set up. How do you feel about online shooters? What is your pattern with them, and then how does that lead into how you feel about Titanfall?
My pattern with them is that I'm pretty well familiar with most of the major franchises, and I've played multiplayer in most of the major games, and most times I just don't care enough to keep playing past like a casual interest. First-person shooters have never been my jam overall. Like certain ones have gotten their hooks in me over the years, but it's probably been like since the days when new Unreal Tournament games were coming out that I was
Yeah.
really into that stuff.
Yeah, and then Unreal Tournament 3 came out, and you were like, "Oh,
Not so much.
that game
Yeah,
wasn't as bad as the rap it got, but it was not. It was
it
no
didn't.
Unreal. It was no. It was no 2004.
It didn't keep me into it for a long period, so we'll leave it at that. But what was so not super into first-person shooters competitively on a regular basis generally. But Titanfall, I'm not going to sit here and say this is the one. This is the one that's going to change everything and get me back into this, and it's going to be my gateway drug into getting back into the genre hardcore. But I do like this a lot. The pace of it and the speed of it and just the relatively easy flow of kind of jumping from Titan to Dude and back and forth, and the balance between the different weapons and ways you can sort of take out the Titans and just the random pilots running around. Like it has a real good pace and a real good flow to it, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, what I really like about Titanfall is that on paper, when you look at the kind of game it is, you would think, well, this game is all about trying to earn your way into a Titan, and then once you get there, boom, like that's where the fun is. You're dominating all over the map, and that's not really the case. Like I think the true testament, and we'll see how this plays out in the long haul once people start finding exploits and balance problems and
Right.
everything that goes into multiplayer games, especially in the early days. Um, is you feel powerful both when you are on the ground and when you are in a mech. And in a lot of ways, the like 4 or 5 matches I played last night, I would get the notification that I could bring down a Titan, and I would just stick to the ground.
Yeah.
I liked the maneuverability that I had as just a grunt soldier. I loved I guess it's the sniper or the assassin class, the
Mhm.
pistol that just automatically lines up the shots on up to like 3 or 4 different guys at once. Like the ability to come out behind a group of 3 guys on the other team, line up a bunch of headshots, and then just fire and watch them all go down. Holy shit, that is satisfying.
It super is.
And I found that playing as that class, I the 2 times I came in first for that round, even though our team lost overall, was when I was playing as that class. So yeah, I need more weapons that automatically line up their shots for me, and then I'm just really good at multiplayer shooters. But yeah, I think that's what's really truly interesting about that game is that they establish that dynamic and don't fall into the traditional structure of just making the mech the end game.
Yeah, and there's certainly, the question you would have there is, is playing as the mech, does that actually feel powerful and does that feel fun if you're actually able to do so much just as a pilot running around on the ground? And I think it does. Because, I mean, you can lay waste to just dudes on the ground so quickly and so easily if you're just a little bit careful about where you line up your shots when you're in the Titan. And, I'll admit that, the maneuverability of the Titan can be kind of a pain. Obviously, when there are like 2 or 3 Titans surrounding you, you're basically fucked no matter what. But the fact that you can just launch out of that thing and then just pull out your anti-Titan gun and just start launching rockets at that thing while you're flying in the air in your goddamn, ejector seat is pretty awesome. Like, just the way they balance that stuff out still makes you feel like you're pretty awesome when you're in a Titan, but it doesn't handicap you, and in fact lets you do rad things when you're on the ground. I think that's what's key about it.
Yeah, that first time that you eject from a Titan, like the first couple times you get in a Titan, you're just gonna get rocked. Like I was probably in my own Titan for less than a minute before someone was smart enough to like grab my bullets, throw them back at me, hit me with missiles, or I get double teamed or something like that. But the first time that you eject up and then fall back on a guy's Titan and then destroy his Titan is very satisfying because it takes that. You often when you die in a shooter in a multiplayer match, there's often like a camera that shows you like here's how you died, and when you have the tech, the Titan, you kind of have 2 lives, and you have a chance to right after that death get revenge for what just occurred, and because when your Titan explodes, it kind of obfuscates what's below you, so it's a little tough to figure out exactly where you want to land. But I bet as players get better, that is going to be like a really critical skill is being able to parlay having died into essentially just kicking out the mech that took you out. So I think it's critical to make sure that hey, once you've killed that guy, you should probably get the hell out, or at least a safe distance away so they can't fall on you.
Yeah, that would be ideal, I would think. God, there was something I was going to ask you about your play time with it, but I can't remember what that was offhand. I will just say that obviously the beta is semi-limited in the amount of content that you can play through. So there's more maps and more modes and other things that they haven't really shown off. But I think what they have shown off here is pretty impressive, and I think it's just a lot of fun. Like, it's a really easy game to get into, I find, especially as someone who has not spent a shit ton of time playing a lot of competitive first-person shooters. And I found I was able, even despite the fact that I was definitely not the best player on really any of the teams I played on, I was able to level up relatively quickly and learn kind of the basics just after a few matches more than anything else.
Yeah, and I think unfortunately the worst thing going for Titanfall, at least if I'm talking specifically about myself, is the fact that Dark Souls 2 comes out on the same day as Titanfall. March is pretty packed. South Park comes out the week before on March 4th, and that I don't know how Titanfall is going to go, the traditional arc of multiplayer shooters, which is like, hey, that first week is pretty fun, then the good people take over, and what's the point? Hard to imagine that from the developers of Call of Duty, this game wouldn't follow a similar pattern, but I don't know. And so what I worry is that I'll probably play, a decent number of matches, that first week, but I'm going to put all my time into Dark Souls because I want to be a part of that experience when it's first out of the gate. And if I'm not playing Dark Souls, I want to play something totally different. South Park's about as far away from Dark Souls as you can get.
You would think,
and I'm going to want to play that too. And I don't expect that just because South Park comes out a week before that I'm going to be able to get through that game's got to be, for 30, 40 hours, I bet, probably.
What, South Park? Are you talking about South Park or
Yeah.
Dark Souls?
South Park.
I'm guessing that South Park is probably a minimum of like 15 to 20. Like it might go longer.
You think it wouldn't be longer than that?
I bet the main quest is like 15 hours, and I bet there's a bunch of weird side, because they've talked about like there being random side stuff all over the city and stuff. So there's probably a lot more to find in there. I don't know. I'm just guessing because my experience with RPGs that have used licenses in the past has usually been they're a lot shorter than the typical RPG. So I'm figuring that, if they're getting Matt and Trey to write a script for that game, they're probably not getting them to write like an 800-page script that goes across, like 40, 50 hours of content. That doesn't seem like something they would be quite up for doing.
Man,
but
I don't know. If they're going to make one of these games and, they cite games like Chrono Trigger as inspiration, I feel like they might go for it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. Like, even
it's a total guess anyway. So.
Even if the game's 20 hours, like that's going to take me more than a week to get through. And then when does Infamous Second Son come out?
That's later in March, I think.
Second Son. Google. March 21st. So there's a bit of a stagger, but like they're all 1 week. March 4th is South Park, March 11th is Titanfall, and Dark Souls. March 21st is Infamous. All these are dropping because the fiscal year ends for a lot of companies on March 31st. So there is a corporate incentive to get these games out so they can count on that financial quarter.
Yeah.
But none of these games are short experiences. Any of these games are going to be a bare minimum 8 hours, and I want to play all 4 of them.
Totally.
But Titanfall, given that it doesn't have a single player mode, its single player is integrated into its multiplayer, but for all intents and purposes, it might as well not have a single player. I feel like that's the one that's going to fall by the wayside for me, and that kind of bums me out given how much fun I've had with the time I've spent with it.
I feel like that's going to be the game I go to just in short bursts, like when I want to play 5 or 6 matches, and then just when I have like an hour free or something.
That's true.
I don't foresee myself spending long stretches just trying to level up and trying to master the online domain there. I see myself just jumping in, playing with friends for an hour or two, a couple of nights a week, and then that being it. And I'd be totally okay with that because my favorite shooters are the ones that I just play for short bursts with friends. That's it.
Yeah, I guess I could see myself, like, if I'm waiting for my wife to get ready before we go out, I'm not going to sit down and start playing a quest in South Park that I don't know when it's going to end. I'm not going to play Dark Souls, which is, you need to set aside an afternoon of your time. But Titanfall, it's like, oh, well, that'll take like 15 minutes to play through a match. So, maybe where there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah.
I just, I have felt myself trying to convince that was a bad sentence.
No, that's fine.
It seems like I've been trying to convince myself that Titanfall is the game that's going to get me into multiplayer shooters in a way that other games haven't. And although I think Titanfall is more fun, and I've had more fun in the moments that I've played it comparative to other multiplayer shooters, I don't know if there's anything fundamentally different about this game that's really going to change my long-term interest in it.
The only thing that's different for me is just the flow of the action and the balance between, you're a dude on the ground and you're a dude in a mech. I mean, is it like mechanically radically different than any other major first-person shooter out there? God, no. I mean, it just adds more futuristic weaponry and giant mechs to the equation of what you've already kind of been playing in a lot of other major first-person shooters. But it does it well. I mean, I feel like it does it really well, at least from the taste that I've had thus far. And I think there's still totally merit in that. Like, it's not revolutionary, fine, but if it's a really well-tuned, exciting game to play, assuming they continue to add things to that game over time, I don't see why it wouldn't be like a huge success. Because, I mean, we talk about how we always want innovation and we always want things to be radically different, but let's be honest, when someone just does something that we like really well, we're more than happy to support it more often than not.
Well, and, how many mediocre shooters have you played? It's not, I wouldn't say it's exactly simple to build an excellent first-person shooter. And then Thief comes out as well on February 25th.
Yeah, it does.
Which
there's a strong possibility I will be reviewing that game, so
we'll
see how that goes.
Brad reached out to me. He's like, hey, you want to review this? And I was like, I don't know how I feel about that game. I've had very negative experiences each time I have seen that game at preview events. The most recent round of coverage from outlets that saw a build of it was actually much more positive. And I will say that, famously, I did not like the preview build of Deus Ex: Human Revolution, and tremendously enjoyed the final product. So I'd love nothing more than for Thief to be great, except that, it was
You have concerns.
it was just straight up bad when I was playing it before at E3 last year and other occasions. So I'm crossing my fingers because would love for there to be a great new Thief game, but have my concerns about whether that's going to be true. But we are real close to video games just popping off.
I mean, basically next week, or week after next is pretty much when it just starts coming full stop. So.
What comes out in April? Do we have a slowdown period? April?
I don't remember a whole lot. There's a million Nintendo games coming out in May. I know that.
Yeah. April, MLB The Show for PS3 and Vita. PS4 version's not out till May. And Dynasty Warriors 8 Extreme Legends.
Ooh!
The Elder Scrolls Online, the game that I think all the preview coverage that went out like a week ago has deflated everyone's interest in, which makes me wonder why Bethesda allowed the NDAs to even be lifted.
I don't know.
Connect Sports Rivals, Final Fantasy 14, A Realm Reborn. Is that?
Oh, the PS4 version.
Is that 14? Is that right? 14.
Yeah, 14 is coming out.
Tropico
for PS4.
5, Demon Gaze, and Child of Light. Now this is just the Wikipedia section for April, so it could be missing some stuff, but not a whole lot going on there. I really want to play Child of Light, but that's at the very end of the month.
And we still don't have a final date for Watch Dogs yet, right? Like, we know it moved out of the fiscal year, so it's after March, but we don't know when exactly.
No, and Shovel Knight comes out the end of next month.
Ooh.
That
looks really good.
Is that actually true?
That is a game I will download for my Wii U.
Yep, March 31st. I am psyched for Shovel Knight. That looks kick-ass.
Looks really good.
That is some classic 2D gameplay. But anything else you played this week?
Not really. I kind of fell down the Ollie Ollie hole a little bit longer, but I mean, basically, I spent most of yesterday playing Titanfall, and then now that I will be playing Thief once it shows up, and I will probably be playing some other things for review here at some point. But mostly that was it. What about you? What else? What have you been playing? What are you up to?
I finished Republic.
Mm-hmm. How was that?
I did not care for it.
Oh.
Unfortunately, I admire what it was going for, the idea of translating controller-based stealth into a touch interface, and so it breaks a stealth game when the character gets up and walks away from the spot that you've put them in, and that happened to me a number of times while playing Republic, and that sort of killed it for me. It breaks all tension when you have your player, Hope, the main character, sitting against the side of a wall, and then she just gets up and walks to another wall for some reason, and could not figure out why that was happening. It seemed completely random, but it happened 5 or 6 times during the course of the game, and really, what are you supposed to do when a character in a stealth game walks away and breaks their line of sight with the enemies on screen? Like, it's the entire game is that. So that was really kind of disappointing. I think there are ways they can address that with the subsequent episodes that hopefully we'll have gameplay tweaks. I'll probably play the rest of it. Ryan Payton is someone I've known for a while. I want to see what else he has in store, and I do like some of the story ideas that they're playing with, and the general idea of controlling cameras around an environment and manipulating different technology objects and picking up things through phones that you're tapping. There's a lot of really cool ideas, and I like those elements of it, but the actual stealth mechanics just did not click for me in a way that felt very satisfying. And I believe that game is supposed to come to Windows and PC at some point. I don't know if they're giving controller options or if they're turning that into just a mouse thing, but I constantly felt like this game would feel better if I was playing it with a controller, and that's too bad for a touch-based game. And I'm hopeful that maybe they can iron out some of that stuff a little bit later. But the story seemed a little cliche, and yeah, I guess I was just kind of generally disappointed for something I was looking forward to. But I intend to play the other episodes, and hopefully they'll be able to build on that going forward. But yeah, unfortunately, not really my bag.
That's too bad. It looked like, if nothing else, a really interesting concept for a game. And, I mean, for a game that it's iOS, right? Like, that was what they initially pushed it out for. For a game that's iOS, it looked really nice. It seemed like it had a really good.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Like,
yeah,
the production values of it are fantastic for an iOS game. They did motion capture for the animation, and you've got David Hayter and Jennifer Hanley. Like, all that stuff is across the board really, really terrific, and money well spent there, elevating the material that was written for them. I just don't know that a lot of the material there was that great to begin with, and then the gameplay just didn't really click for me, which was a bummer. But
that's too bad.
Less of a bummer was beating Spelunky.
Yes.
Which I did do earlier this week. I finally managed to reach my goal, which I had set for myself before moving on from Spelunky, at least as a daily feature for the website, was beating Yama, who is the second hidden boss in the game that you can only access by when you defeat the first boss, riding his head down into the lava into a secret passage, which takes you to a secret world. You go through that, and then you get to the secret second boss. There's a lot of other things you have to do along the way to get there, but that is one of the hilarious main hooks in getting on the path to Yama, and I did it, and I beat Chris Remo that day, and that was a great feeling. And it's Spelunky, along with Dark Souls, things I've crammed into January and February, but both easily some of the most satisfying gameplay experiences I've ever had, largely because they feel so much player driven. It's not a lot of, man, it's really cool what these game designers set up for me. It's a lot of, man, these game designers set these things up for me, and I beat them. I beat them at their own game, and that's what was really satisfying about both those games. And yeah, so I've put Spelunky behind me, but at least in terms of a thing on the site. But I remain utterly addicted to that game.
I feel like we've probably also perhaps put mostly Risk of Rain behind us. Like we'll play it again at some point live, but I think we kind of hit the sweet spot with that one, very much accidentally.
Well, as folks mentioned when they reached out to me after the feature, was that a lot of what that game has is an element of randomness to the item drops, and if you just get the right items, you can kind of cruise to victory. And that a lot of the skill of the game, as is the case with a lot of roguelikes, is that what happens when you go on a run where you don't get that stuff.
Right.
And then it becomes critical to understand how you path the enemies when you're drawing in a teleporter, what classes allow you to sort of maintain crowd control. Things like that come much more into play on runs where you don't get to become a walking tank like I did and just sort of storm through the second half of the game, because that does not happen most of the time.
And there are still hidden things to find in that game. There are apparently random pathways in certain stages, and obviously character classes both of us still need to unlock. But you got to the end. You beat the last boss. That happened.
I did. Yeah, like if I was going to set a goal for that feature ending, it would have been beat the game.
Whoops.
And I didn't mean to do that. But it was cool that I got to see the end of it. That was the whole point of us booting up that stream in the first place, was seeing more of Risk of Rain. And that game, I think, is going. We mentioned a little bit on the stream. That game is going to be fantastic on Vita.
I think so.
I am really excited for that. I think that is going to be right at home on that platform, and I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy that. And I guess with Spelunky, I'm now just coming up with new tasks for myself, and so I did the daily challenge, and I streamed it from my own Twitch channel late last night, and I think I can achieve the speed lunking achievement, which is beat the game in under 8 minutes.
Okay.
Which is most times when you play that game and you're playing it safely, which is what you're supposed to do when you play that game, it takes about 30 minutes to finish that game. So 8 minutes is shaving off a lot of time on a playthrough, but I managed to make it to 4-2, which is 2 levels away from the end, and I think I can do it. So I might try and give that a go, at least as something to practice and mess around with on some of the streams that I do every once in a while.
Yeah, I think that would be fun to watch. I mean, that's the beauty of Spelunky, right? Like that's there's just so many different ways you can approach it, and so many different things you can kind of choose to attack if you want to. So yeah, I mean, but by all means, squeeze as much life out of that game as you possibly can, because obviously people are still interested in it.
Yeah, I plan to. And people like watching me die, so
yeah, it's fun.
I want to give the people what they want.
It's satisfying.
Did I play anything else? Republic, Risk of Rain, Spelunky. I don't think so. I finished Jazzpunk, but I don't know if I have anything more to say about that.
Yeah. We've espoused the joys of that game many times over at this point.
You should play Jazzpunk.
Needless to say, it is so far my favorite thing I've played this year, but it is early in the year, so.
Yeah, it is the most fun I've had with the game this year, for sure.
Totally.
It might not be my favorite game, but I think that might be Banner Saga, or Spelunky, but Spelunky doesn't really count, I guess. Anyway, let's move on to a little bit of news.
Let's do it.
Nintendo had a Nintendo Direct yesterday.
And it sure was a Nintendo Direct, all right.
Yeah, it was a pretty lengthy one. I want to say about 30 minutes. But it, didn't have any, real revelatory pieces of news. There was no new Zelda announced. There was no, hey, Nintendo still cares about Metroid, or anything of that nature. But they did, there was a bunch of little news and some stuff that I think is worth getting excited about, depending on who you are. Little Mac is joining Super Smash Brothers.
Which, how had that not happened already?
Yeah, I think then the response was mostly, at least for me, the same thing of how was he not in that game? That seems like a real natural. Yeah, that seems like a
dudes already.
Natural addition. Mario Golf on 3DS has a single-player RPG mode called the Castle Club, which I believe that people traditionally say their favorite Mario Golf game is the one for. Is it Game Boy Advance or Game Boy Color? But it's the one that has a single-player RPG mode. So
yeah,
I've heard that is the one. Yeah, I've never really followed the series, but my understanding is that is the best one. So it seems like they're trying to bring that back for Mario Golf. Kirby Triple Deluxe coming May 2nd. I'll probably play that. I like me some Kirby, and I have not played a Kirby game in a long, long time. And
did you play the Yarn, Epic Yarn? For Wii?
Oh yeah. My only problem with that was. It was a little too easy.
It is very easy, but goddamn it, that's a charming game.
But yes, absolutely. Yoshi's New Island, which still looks terrible, arrives on March 14th, and so I hope that is kind of like Zelda, and that the way they show that game with high definition videos on people's monitors, it will look a lot better on a 3DS screen. So
one would hope. I mean, someone made the comment that it looks like a CD-ROM game from like the early '90s, and they're not wrong. They're not wrong.
It looks bad. There's new Ace Attorney in development. I should probably play one of those before caring about there being a new one.
And that was only mentioned on the Japanese stream, wasn't it? They didn't talk about that at all on the US stream.
No. So that means that's probably a ways off in terms of coming out over here. They released the same day, yesterday, Steel Diver Sub Wars, which is a follow-up to the game that no one played at the 3DS launch called Steel Diver because it was a simple, short game that they were charging $40 for.
It was kind of crappy, to be honest.
And not very good. And so this one is Nintendo dipping its toes into free-to-play. There is a free and premium version of the game. The free version comes with a couple of single-player missions, but not the whole single-player mode, but full access to all the multiplayer. And when you buy the premium version, you get access to all the single-player and I think more subs in the multiplayer. But I don't know the pricing structure on the premium version, but it's interesting to see Nintendo at least looking into a business model that it had previously said, off with you.
Yes. What was the other one? There was that Rusty Baseball something or other that was also a free-to-play game.
Yeah, Rusty's Real Deal Baseball, which is just that's a great name.
Conceptually, it's a free-to-play game. It's mini-game based. It's just a bunch of mini games that are based on various baseball mechanics, and it is mascotted by a character who is a dog with a comb over, which I think is great. He looks like the landlord from Seinfeld. It's amazing. But the weird thing about that game is that you can haggle for the prices, like the real world money prices of the stuff in the game, which, how the hell does that work?
Well, I mean, like all that Iwata sort of said was that you would be able to learn traits about Rusty, and like the fact that he likes donuts or things like that, and you'd be able to bribe him to bring the real world cost of buying these extra games down. And I think that is genius, especially if those items are tied to your skill level in some of the mini games.
Yeah.
Like Nintendo's gonna. Well, but you would assume that Nintendo's going to develop fair-minded mini games, stuff that they've done in the past. It's not going to be skewed against the player in a way that we sometimes see in free-to-play. The deck's not going to be stacked against you. So if getting those items is the result of skillful play in that mini game that they give you for free, and you can get that down to, like, say, $1,
yeah,
that's pretty cool. Like, I love the idea that your skill plays into how that stuff works out, and so I'm hopeful it's not just random. We didn't get a true sense of those mechanics, but that's a very Nintendo way to handle a new business model in a playful fashion. Like, who else would handle the exchange of money for new content in a way that was humorous and fun and ultimately sort of benefited the player? I was fascinated by that, and I don't know if things like that kind of dynamic pricing is possible on places like iOS if they were to ever go there in the future. But I feel like whatever they do, like, they're laying out, if you're going to participate in these business models, that's sure as hell a consumer-friendly way to do it.
Yeah, I think so too. And if nothing else, that game seemed like it was pretty fun and cute anyway. So.
Yeah, and the minigames look fun.
Yeah, totally. What else we got?
Pokemon Battle.
Nintendo?
Yeah, Pokemon Battle Trozoi. Downloadable puzzle action game. Kind of looks like Candy Crush Saga, but it's a sequel to an existing game, so it can't be. Coming out March 20th. It looks okay. Mm-hmm. Inazuma 11, which is like a soccer RPG, which has never come out in North America, is on the eShop right now. Look kind of interesting. Mm-hmm. NES Remix 2 comes out on April 20th.
Games you care about.
Yeah, this one actually looks pretty rad, and there's also a full-on Mario Brothers with Luigi, and this time you run to the left. And his
revolution, total revolution.
And his jump is lengthier and floatier in the way that Luigi has traditionally been in other games. I mean, as dumb as that kind of is, like, it's a long time coming that Nintendo has embraced the idea of futzing around with expectations in its old games rather than just relying on selling you those old games for the millionth time at a premium.
And on top of that, it's a piece of a package that is relatively cheap to begin with. So it's not like they're trying to resell you Super Mario Brothers by itself, just going to the left now. It's just, here is one thing that comes with all these other mini games that include, like, Ice Hockey and Super Mario Brothers 2 and Punch Out. So have fun.
Yeah, totally. So, NES Remix 2 kind of looks like the game we were all waiting for. I didn't play NES Remix 1, but I'll probably download NES Remix 2. GBA is coming to Virtual Console in the spring, starting with Metroid Fusion, Mario & Luigi, Mario Advance 3, which I believe is Yoshi's Island, and some others as we go forward.
I still don't really understand why that's coming to the Wii U Virtual Console instead of the 3DS Virtual Console, but...
Just don't think about it too much.
I try not to. It hurts my head.
I think that stuff is... Steven Totillo of Kotaku pointed this out on Twitter yesterday. It's not the most original thought, but it's worth considering yet again. But if you look at exactly what you just said, like, why is that coming out on Wii U when the Ambassador program put out a bunch of GBA games on 3DS and those games aren't available to buy? And then you look at the games that are coming out for 3DS, Mario Golf and Kirby are both coming out on May 2nd.
Right.
Yoshi's New Island comes out on March 14th. What comes out in April? Something comes out in April. Anyway, like, they have basically one or two major games for the 3DS every single month. There's just nothing for the Wii U. Like, everything that they talked about, Bayonetta 2, X, they didn't talk about, Smash Brothers. It's all late 2014 probably. That's
Right.
probably when we're going to see like a major game in October, November, December, January, and they'll try and have those heavy hitters around the holiday season. But so what Steven pointed out was like, imagine the world where Nintendo got over this idea of two platforms, and all of this R&D, all of this game development was going into one platform.
Sure.
Like, Nintendo is clearly capable of putting out an extraordinary amount of software that is to a really high level of quality. And imagine if they were all doing that on one platform, what that would look like. Would it change necessarily its perception of the market? I don't know. But would it result in a platform that had a ton of really, really great games that was really worth buying? Probably. And it's almost tragic right now to watch them try and straddle both worlds and just really having a tough time doing that on Wii U, which I'm sure is compounded by the fact that it's their first high-definition console.
Yeah, and my comment was more just that if you're putting out handheld games for a virtual console, just the notion that why wouldn't you put it on the handheld system you already have? But you're right. I mean, it would be much nicer if all this stuff kind of felt like it was part of a more universalized platform. But obviously, that's not coming anytime soon, as we have seen from their current trends.
Yeah. So I mean that's mostly that's kind of what they announced and showed. Nothing major, but you imagine they're gonna keep those cards closer to their chest as the year goes on. There's only
new
so
Mario
many.
Kart trailer too.
Yep, and you know what? That game looks pretty good.
It does. It looks really nice. Got the Koopalings now. That's cool.
Yeah, I played a lot of Mario Kart 7 when I was with my family for the holidays because that's one of the games that one of my cousins had out, and yeah, that Mario Kart is still fun. I will probably pick up Mario Kart 8 because a high definition Mario Kart has a certain attraction that they won't probably be able to get me for on Mario Kart 9, but they've got me on Mario Kart 8 for sure.
That is a game that my girlfriend will play with me, so
Yeah.
I will get it because she likes maybe 3 games a year total. So I get in where I can.
The Evil Within now has a release date, August
Does.
26th. They're taking sort of the big August release date that games like BioShock have taken in the past. Still don't know what to make of that game. I'm excited for it. The times I've seen it don't make it seem particularly scary, but do make it seem like it will be an excellent action game. So I am optimistic, but
If nothing else, it seems gross. If it's not necessarily shocking or scary, it seems like they have definitely gone up with the gore factor by several factors.
Man, and a new Shinji Mikami next-gen survival horror game.
Yeah.
That game could be total shit, and I would play it.
Totally.
That's all you need to tell me is the tagline, and I am in.
Yeah. Not to harp on NPD numbers much at all, just to say that PS4 was apparently outsold the Xbox One and NPD in January, and the Xbox platform, which includes Xbox One and Xbox 360, sold the most games of any platform if you're going to combine numbers like that. So a lot of people trying to make wins out of whatever numbers they have, I guess, as per usual.
Well, I will say we made fun of Sony at the time and criticized Sony at the time for the PlayStation family bundling of numbers. I see no reason to not lay the same criticism at Microsoft's feet to try and make their numbers sound better. It obfuscates what's actually happening in a way that, may sound nice in a headline, but rings awfully untrue to anyone that has any inkling of what they're talking about.
Yep.
And it's just sort of weird because the reason you release these kinds of numbers are for investors to get excited and for your base to have ammunition in the system wars. And anyone that knows anything can see right past that. I've never seen the point in essentially lying about the numbers that people actually want to know. It mostly just makes you seem weak. But I think what they must be hoping is that they can just coast till March, and then Titanfall will give them an edge, and then they'll no longer have to do something like this. And I think that's really when we start to get a sense of, can Xbox get on equal footing with the PlayStation 4? Titanfall is shaping up to be an excellent game. Seems that critics really like it. Players that are playing it really like it. They're not going to release a lower SKU for that game. They're gonna ride out what they've got, and then we'll have a better sense of, they've put a lot of cards on the table with Titanfall, and I'm curious to see how that pans out for them, insofar as I am interested in the financial stakes of various video game companies.
Yeah, just to follow up on that, the key thing with those numbers and the fudging of them to try to make them sound like wins, it's like you said, it's for investors, and honestly, it's a perception thing more than anything else.
Yeah.
When you're in PR, it is your job to make wins out of whatever you can. That is very specifically your task, and even if the thing you are saying is complete abject bullshit, if it sounds good enough that some guy with money in a suit might go, oh, okay. That's all you really have to do. That was a core tenet of the plastic instrument wars, was finding the statistics that made your platform sound the best, as I recall. So, when it came to sales numbers, we had to kind of tout our DLC, where Guitar Hero could actually tout the game sales numbers. So it's that kind of thing where you just have to find the wins where you can.
Yeah, that is definitely true. And some folks in the chat pointing out like, well, who cares if it's an Xbox One exclusive? It's coming out on PC, and that's true. Like, I think for a lot of folks, like, they're going to be able to get that game on PC, and it's probably going to run better on PC. I think they actually demonstrated that on the stream yesterday, that the PC version runs crazy fast on pretty modest setups. Although I think that game still looks pretty good on Xbox One. It's not mind-blowing, but I like
nice.
the way it looks. And but I'll probably play it on PC if I have the choice. But in any case, that's going to be advertised heavily as an Xbox One game. So the PC version, while important to this crowd that is watching a show like this, and hanging out on sites like Giant Bomb, that PC version is largely irrelevant to the larger audience that Microsoft and Sony are fighting for. The folks that send platforms from 20 million to 100 million over the course of their lifetime are unfortunately not us, but they are the other folks out there, the Maddens and the Call of Duty players of the world. Even if we do participate in those games, there's a large audience they're after, and Titanfall being only on Xbox One is a play for those folks. And I don't know how that's going to pan out, but I am at least curious.
Same. Speaking of the platforms and such, the PS4 is out in Japan next week.
Right, that's not out there yet.
Yeah, which I keep forgetting about. We're so accustomed to getting, especially like Nintendo and Sony platforms in Japan first, that you forget that, like, oh yeah, they're not getting it until next week, which is just kind of crazy to think about. But so there will finally be a PS4 in Japan as of next week.
Well, good for them.
Yeah, glad that got out there. Last of Us DLC is out today.
Yeah, I don't have a copy of Last of Us, but I do want to play that. I reviewed it in the office ages ago, last summer when that game came out. So that copy is still at the office, but I do want to play that eventually. Maybe I'll have to track down a copy of that game so I can play that. I guess
Speaking of copies of games, not to interrupt you, I don't think you ever sent me back that copy of Beyond.
My wife was supposed to do that. I'm gonna blame her.
Okay,
we'll
do that.
It's probably in our car.
That's fine. It's not like I need it right now. I just was.
For all those times you're sitting at home late at night going, you know what? I really want to play some Beyond Two Souls.
Yeah. I'm gonna want to fire that up.
A game you will never ever play again.
Never. Did you see the NBA 2K14 Space Jam mod video?
I tweeted that yesterday, and I need to load that up.
So this isn't a new thing. They did this for 2K13 on PC as well. But yeah, I'm totally in favor of this being a yearly thing they add every year, especially once next year happens and they actually, I hope, shift the engine to the next-gen NBA engine versus the one that they've been using for the last several years. Because imagine how high-res and dope Bugs Bunny is going to look in that Space Jam mod.
Do you have NBA 2K14 on the PC?
I don't, but I mean, I might. Maybe I'll get it anyway, just because.
Yeah, it's on my Steam Press account. We should contact 2K and maybe think about loading.
Yeah, maybe that's a video feature. Is constant Space Jam battles in NBA 2K14 on PC.
Yeah, I like that. I like that idea, especially after getting slightly disappointed when EA went back on. There was a tweet from the NBA Jam Twitter account that said retweet if you're ready for a new NBA Jam. And then EA was like, yesterday there was an unauthorized use of the NBA Jam Twitter handle. We do not have any announcements to make at this time, even though they've left that tweet up.
Unauthorized NBA Jam tweeting.
Yeah, the system wars have really gone to a deep, dark place when we're getting
Clearly.
unauthorized NBA Jam tweeting. As we head towards the end of the show, folks want to start dropping some questions in the chat. We'll take a few of those as we move towards the end. Do you play MLB The Show? Do you play baseball video games?
I have not gotten into baseball games really since the 16-bit era. So basically, whatever this new RBI baseball is going to be is the only thing that is kind of interest to me at the moment. I know the show is great. Everyone has talked nothing but nice things about it over the years. It's just baseball games just don't do it for me because I don't watch baseball. I don't find it fun to watch.
Okay.
I don't get the enjoyment out of it. So many other people seem to, and I feel worse off for that.
Every time I go to a baseball game, it's nice to be in the sun and drink beer. That's the extent to what I get out of baseball. It's just not that is, if I had to pick the last sport I'd be interested in watching, like the main sports, like basketball, football, hockey, soccer. Baseball is at the bottom for sure.
I might watch baseball over soccer, but that's like that those kind of go back and forth depending on my mood. So
yeah, but in soccer, you might see a bunch of people try to kill each other.
Yeah, but there's so much flopping in soccer. It's just not that much fun to watch. I don't know.
All right, well, okay. That's coming out in May for the PS4. I don't know why that version's coming out later. That's too bad. It's after the baseball season properly begins, which I have seen from some people to be kind of upsetting, which makes sense. I imagine if you're into sports games, it is fun to play those as part of the season getting underway. So too bad on that.
New next-gen version, they're still working on it. I understand. I think that's happened before in previous generations where the first entry in a new system, comes not at the same time as the season launch. I mean, you can only time that stuff so well, and stuff can only it's done when it's done. So, I mean, I don't know. I'd rather that game was good and not just like a shitty husk of a sports game than just throwing it out there and just like having it be like Madden 360 all over again.
GC for Life asking, Cubs or White Sox? Cubs. If I have to choose a side, why would I choose the White Sox?
Who picks the White Sox?
Nobody.
Does anybody ever pick the White Sox? I mean, the White Sox have actually been to the playoffs, and I think they've been to the World Series, haven't they?
The White Sox are. I'm not saying they're not the better team. They are definitely. I'm just saying
no one cares about them, right?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. 100%. It's like being a Jets fan. What are you doing?
Know some Jets fans.
Yeah, I bet you do.
They're perpetually beleaguered people.
Yeah. Don't be a Jets fan.
No, don't.
Move to a different city.
It's like what it used to be like to be a Clippers fan until the Clippers became popular.
Right. All right. Last piece of news that I think is potentially interesting are Steam tags. They launched this week on Steam. There are player customizable, player generated tags that are attached to games that Steam is using for a couple different things. They're trying to find new ways to increase discoverability on the Steam marketplace, which is obviously already a problem and will continue to be an even bigger problem the more games that are added. How do you find the good stuff? These player-created tags, ideally, are things that go beyond just action or shooter, sort of the generic ways that we think about describing games, but actually don't tell you a whole lot about the specific elements of a game itself.
Right.
So these are like, crowdsourced, community created, and that hopefully they end up landing on tags that really do give you a sense of like, hey, I really liked this game. I'll click this tag and then dive deeper into games that are similar to that. So, ideally, I think a really great idea, but its first couple of days have been pretty rough, and I think the criticisms leveled against it are pretty fair.
Yeah, pretty rough is putting it mildly. Like, some of the stuff that people are attaching to those games is just vile, nasty, brutal shit. And, I mean, I hate to say that's part and parcel with, getting an online gaming community involved in anything, but, I mean, that does tend to happen, especially when you have games we're already in the thick of this conversation about what makes a game or not a game, and so people are just going around tagging not a game to everything that they don't think is a game, or saying far more offensive and mean-spirited things on top of that. It's like, okay, I understand the idea. You want to bring the audience in. You want to help them regulate stuff. That's what Greenlight was for. That's what this is for. But I think what we've learned time and time again is that I'm not saying the entire Steam community is this, but there is a very strong element in the Steam community that is a bunch of assholes. Let's just be real. They are doing horrible shit, and they are trying to take over the conversation in all these different crowdsourced initiatives that Steam does. And it's not being particularly well regulated, Like there's no reason why tags with offensive like sweary titles should even be getting attached to anything to begin with. It just seems like it's kind of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, the one that a lot of folks were pointing to yesterday were the tags attached to Fez. Now, there's a lot of strong emotions that people have tied up in Phil Fish, both kind of as an internet character and as a designer. He has said some really vitriolic things, himself, unprompted, sometimes prompted, that have made him sort of a flashpoint of criticism. I think sometimes deserved, oftentimes not deserved, but I don't think you can look at the tags that were attached to Fez, things like choke on it, and things that were related to some comments he has made in the past, as being helpful or useful in anything but just harassment and abuse that is undeserved for the community around that game, for the developer, and one of the easy fixes that Steam could make is just you are not allowed to make a tag unless you have that game in your library.
Right.
Right now, you're allowed to create tags regardless of whether you have purchased the game. I think anyone that has purchased Fez is in a more qualified position to describe the game than someone that has just a vindictive attitude towards the designer for whatever reason, whether rightly or wrongly from their perspective. And so that's, I think, a really easy way to limit some of the abuse. And then also, it's worth keeping in mind that the early days of any feature like this, the worst stuff is going to happen right away. That's just kind of how these systems go. But that also means that the developers of these games are sitting and looking at a bunch of nastiness for a couple of days while that stuff sorts itself out. So that's not entirely fair to those hardworking folks either. And yeah, so it's in a rough state, and it's hard to really just I think BioShock and a couple of other games. I think one of the Final Fantasy games, one of the top tags, I'm not sure if it's still the case, but at least for a while, was just straight up the ending.
Yeah.
So people were spoiling the game through the tags, and a lot of that stuff's been killed. I think a lot of it's starting to get moderated. Steam finally kind of stepped in and started addressing some of that. But it's a weird thing.
It's the thing. Whenever you open the gates, the most aggressive and nastiest elements are always the first ones to push through. And again, hopefully with some curation, some moderation, and over time, that will turn into a very useful feature. I mean, the idea behind it is not a bad one by any stretch. It cannot be allowed to be just totally wild, wild west the way it is, because that's just going to ruin the user experience on Steam for a variety of different reasons.
Yeah, it's. I think there is potential for this going forward to be an extremely useful tool. Part of the problem of opening this stuff up when it's not necessarily, not to say that Valve hasn't thought it through, but they tend to release things not fully baked because that's just part of their process. They release things in a public beta so that people can help them figure it out with them, where they can try and find unforeseen consequences of these ideas. And this is just another version of that. And it's not that I think the tags can't be cheeky. I think the idea of someone in the chat mentioned Gone Home having not a game. I think that's kind of funny. I don't think that's really offensive, and I think that actually plays into the larger narrative and discussion around that game in a meaningful way that wouldn't come across in traditional tags. I don't, you can look at that and say it's mean-spirited, but I don't know necessarily that that's true. And I would actually, of anyone, I would click on that tag and want to see what else they had put against it, because if I want to play a game like Gone Home, my guess is the kinds of people attaching something like Not a Game are tagging a bunch of games that I'm probably interested in.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I imagine that people like Steve Gaynor probably doesn't see it the same way. Like, I imagine that if people are tagging your game Not a Game, like, you can take that as a cheeky fun thing, but I imagine that more likely you're being like, oh great, more of this bullshit. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
that's just where I come off.
And so we'll see. It's an interesting idea. Curious to see where it goes from here. A T Tree pointing out that the best Steam tag is Praise the Sun. I agree. That's a really good one. It's a Dark Souls reference. And another one of the ones on Gone Home was a walking simulator, which I think that's a really
that's fine. That's not offensive or horrible or mean in any way. It's just like yeah, you walk around a lot. That's true.
Yeah, I'd play some more walking simulators.
Agreed.
Okay, that's about all. Unless you got any other news,
No.
that kind of covers what I have seen. Let me see if I can pull up some questions. Some people suggesting things about Steam tags that we already talked about. Someone mentioning that Ground Zeroes comes out in March. That's right, but don't worry. It'll only take me 2 hours to play.
Yeah.
You gonna watch House of Cards Season 2?
I still haven't watched House of Cards Season 1.
What?
So
What are you doing?
I don't know. Look, dude, I watch a fair amount of TV. I pick and choose where I can, and I'm interested in House of Cards, but I mean, with the amount of video games that I play, I kind of got to pick my TV spots where I can,
It's real good.
I heard it's good.
It's not the best show ever, but man, Kevin Spacey is so goddamn good in that show.
Yeah, and I love Kevin Spacey when he is at peak. Kevin Spacey, when he has reached his final form, he is one of the most charming and fun actors to watch be an asshole there is. So.
Oh, and if you want to watch a television show where a man chews scenery, like is just shoving the entire scene in his mouth and just that's House of Cards.
That is a thing I would like to watch.
I love it. So yeah, I've seen the first season. I'm going to watch season 2, which I think came out. I don't know what's the term you use when Netflix releases a whole frickin' season all at once. But
launch is a fair term for it.
Yeah, that came out today. Feather Dave mentioning don't forget Lords of Shadow 2 is coming out soon as well. I can easily forget that Lords of Shadow 2
I keep trying to... Whatever, Lords of Shadow wasn't a horrible game. It just wasn't that... I don't know. It just didn't do it for me. So
I just could not have any less interest in playing. Like, if Vinny... this is what I've said. If Vinny says Lords of Shadow 2 is really, really great, and if I believe him, because I'm not sure that I will, then I'll play Lords of Shadow 2. I'll play it if Vinny says I should play it, but that is the only way that I will play that game, because I did not really care for Lords of Shadow.
Yeah, I totally crapped out halfway through that game, so.
SteamWorld Dig, this is some breaking news, coming to PS4 and PlayStation Vita. I've heard that game is terrific.
I have too.
And there's a PC version that I should play. I should download that game.
I probably still won't, but I should. You're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Dungeon Keeper is now free on Good Old Games at the moment.
Hey, that's cool.
So
I've never played that game.
That feels like a little bit of a make good on the whole current Dungeon
Keeper.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that Good Old Games can do that without EA signing off. I don't know that for a fact, but you would have to imagine that is something EA approves of. So that's cool. That's nice of them.
People like Dungeon Keeper.
Oh, people mentioning it's not something you've really played, Alex, but the Zero Escape series, which is 999 and VLR games, the visual novel games for the DS, and then the sequel, VLR, is on 3DS and Vita. Its creator recently tweeted that he's made no progress on making the third and final game of the series because it has sold poorly in Japan, hasn't gotten the green light for producing a third game. he mentioned on Twitter that they had explored the ideas of crowdfunding it, but decided against it for whatever reason. That's really sad to hear. It's a bummer that they're not deep into developing that game, which means it's, even in the most optimistic scenario, 18 months off if they were to begin today, I would imagine. But I had a lot of problems with VLR and the way it expanded the general universe of that game series in a way that I thought just kind of got a little too out of control. I do want to see how it ends, and I think it would be tragic if those guys didn't explore alternative funding options. Japan seems to be having some success lately with exploring things like Kickstarter, and I wouldn't, because I don't fund game Kickstarters, I wouldn't put my money behind a Zero Escape 3 Kickstarter, but my guess is there would be a whole lot of people that would. So I hope they rethink that, and I'm going to try and reach out to the designer and see if I can't talk to him a little bit more about that. But my guess is he's getting bombarded with requests regarding that, so we'll see how that pans out. That's all I got. What are you up to this weekend?
Let's see. Well, today I'm actually going to go see the new Wolfenstein for the first time.
Are you?
This afternoon. I don't know when the embargo is on that, so I won't be able to say exactly when I'll be able to talk about it, but I will at least be able to go check it out.
I forgot that game exists.
I know, right? Yeah. There's been a lot of instances of, oh, hey, right, that game's still coming recently, so that's one of them. And this weekend I'm going to be stopping in at Indiecade East at the Museum of the Moving Image here in Queens, New York. There are a number of different talks and games being shown off as part of this whole 3-day event. I'm not going today, but I will probably be stopping in on Saturday and Sunday to check out a couple of talks, play some games, and talk to some people. Rich Gallup will be there.
What?
Yeah, talking about some Game of Thrones Facebook gaming. Dave Lang was going to be there, and then his flight was canceled, so now I'm taking his pass. That's part of the reason why I'm going multiple days.
Way to go, East Coast weather.
Yeah.
Keep Dave Lang out. Keep him here. I'm trying to keep the Lang zone contained in the Midwest. I don't need it spreading to other parts of the country.
Like a cancer. Yeah, no, that's pretty much going to be my weekend, and probably more Titanfall, since that beta's only for like a week or something, right?
I mean, that game's not far off. We're only a couple of weeks away from the main launch, so the closed alpha was only for a weekend.
Right.
I can't imagine the beta is going to be for too long, but I'll probably sneak in some matches of that. I have to spend at least a decent chunk of this weekend now that I have my Sundays back, which I'm really excited about. Working on, I have to give a talk to a bunch of college students next week. There's the Illinois College Media Association or conference. I'm not sure, something like that. Anyway, they invited me to come talk to them, and when I got the email and agreed to it, I swear the email said the talk was 15 to 20 minutes, and then I looked at it again and it was 45 to 60. So I really need to rethink my talk and get all that together. Some folks have asked if that will be streamed or anything like that. I doubt it. I don't think that's the kind of setup that they have. I'm going to record it for my own edification, but I don't know if that's something they'll allow me to share. But if that is the case, I will make sure and do that. And if for some reason there is a live stream, I will make sure and let people know. But the core of my talk is going to be taking out. It's not just a repeat of the TEDx talk I did last year, but it's riffing in some similar areas because I need to try and say something useful to these college journalists. I think the title of the talk that I came up with was "You've said something stupid on the internet, now what?"
Right.
The idea is that these days, as a journalist or just as a member of society, like you're on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you're on Tumblr. At some point, you're going to say something you regret, or you're going to say something that was inarticulate. You're going to get yourself in trouble at some point. And what do you do once you become that target? So I'm going to walk through, instances where I have said dumb things. I have 6 years of experience saying stupid things on Twitter and other social networks, and the ways I've handled that. And like walking folks through, like, hey, let's talk about Deep Internet 101. Like, do you know what doxing and swatting is? Because you should probably know what those things are, and how to manage your passwords in a way that goes beyond just password 123, and so just some basic stuff like that I've encountered in my years doing this. So so I need to come up with something that's longer than 15 minutes. So.
Well, if I might make a suggestion,
Mm-hmm.
if you are really pushing for time, you can always show some videos. The lazy teachers method is never a
Yeah.
bad way to go. Just kind of throw some video stuff in there, take a few minutes to chunk here, chunk there, and eventually, next thing you know, it's within like an hour, and you're like, shit, awesome.
I was thinking I'll just bring in Spelunky. It's like, so
Yeah.
let's do the daily challenge. Anyway, that is gonna do it for us. Hey, was not able to line up a guest for Monday.
You know
But
why that doesn't matter? We have Monday off.
what we do?
Yeah, it's President's Day.
That's a CBS holiday.
Yeah.
Woo! What? That's great.
Yeah,
That's the
right?
best news
I
ever.
know. I didn't know that either. I was trying to book a guest for this weekend. Everyone's like, "Oh yeah, I know they're taking the President's Day holiday off." I'm like, "Oh right, okay,
That's great.
yeah,
Oh, this is the best Friday show ever.
right." Accidental 3-day weekend is the best thing.
Wow, I really am going to get my talk done this weekend if I have Monday off. I was thinking about taking a day off. Great.
Well, there you go. Now you
Thanks,
can.
Papa CBS.
Thanks,
Giving me-
Presidents of the United States of America.
Yeah, not everyone gets that day off, so thank you, CBS. All right, well, then we will not have a Monday show and there will not be a guest, but we'll have one the week after that. I'll figure something out. What are you gonna? Are you playing? So you play Titanfall? That's probably
Yeah.
it this weekend.
I'll probably be on Titanfall a fair amount this weekend. So if you want to play at any point, just hit me up. I'll be
Cool.
around.
I'll probably be doing the same. I will talk to you next Friday then, Alex.
All right. Oh.